All right, so we could talk about content all day. But the other thing, Jeff, I think that was really interesting when we talked earlier is, and nobody else has brought it up yet, so I thought it was a fascinating kind of oh shit moment. But talking about how the role our customers play in our success. And, when we talked, I don't think I've ever, when I've taken a job, I don't think I've ever done that side of my research. Are the customers happy with what we're doing? So I'd love to hear, a little bit more about that.
That has become one of my must interview questions. But the hard part is actually getting the honest answer. Because, right, you can be pointed to Gartner and Forrester reviews or, GPI or G2. But remember, those are all highly curated, right? Like, there are teams focused on making sure those specific accounts are happy and they're putting that 5 stars in there. So sometimes it can be hard to really get the honest answer as you're going through that. And, we all know, number one, right, for in software in particular, right, recurring revenue is critical. Reducing churn is critical. Cross-sell, upsell, keeping your competition out of there. It's much easier to sell and expand a current customer than it is to get a new one. Yet marketing very often, customer marketing is almost this afterthought. It's like, go get us some case studies and stuff like that. Well, if your customers aren't happy, everything becomes really, really hard, right? I can't get sales references. I can't get ROI statistics to put in my top of funnel on what the software will do for you. Oh, you'll get a 2x ROI or a reduction in this or a savings of that, or right. If I don't have happy customers with actual results, I don't have case studies. I don't have numbers to put that are actually proof points. I don't have sales references. I don't have analyst relations references. I now can't, connect dots as we're going through that. And everyone's world starts to get so much harder when you just don't have happy customers. One company I was at they had over 30% of their customers in red, and then another massive chunk in yellow trending red. And what was interesting was this wasn't even necessarily on the C-suite's radar, because a lot of rose-colored glasses, people wanted to try to make the seem like everything was amazing, everything was great. But when you dug in, you're like, why are we having this trouble? And we started to realize we're going back to the same 10 customers, and they're getting really annoyed of us, asking for quotes for press releases and getting, putting their logos and stuff and having them talk on panels. And they start feeling taken advantage of. Well, that's not what you want. And we started to dig into it, and it was like, oh, this isn't good, right? We work really hard to fill the top of funnel and to get these leads and to get these sales, but you've got to have a great product that delivers on the promises. It's okay if it breaks on occasion and things like that, but that's where in-product telemetry and having marketing actually care and look at that is critical. It's like actually having a roadmap that you believe in. There's a great book by Dan Heath I reference a lot called Upstream, and it's the story is paid off quickly in this little story. It's just two friends walking along the river, the Deschutes, and they see a kid going by, and then another one. They realize these kids need help, and there's a whole stream of them coming. And get in, they start pulling them out. After a while, they're exhausted. One gets out, starts walking up the river. And friend's like, are you giving up? Like, no, I'm going to go stop the person who's throwing the kids in. Some of that's that's sales and product at times, right? You're giving more bodies with sales, giving more customers. And if the product keeps accelerating the river and the water coming down, those two things have to kind of get fixed, because that all really starts to connect. It impacts all that recurring revenue that you need to be successful, to have a great exit, a great roadmap, delivering on it, happy customers. And so that's kind of where you have to start looking at that customer marketing element and does the product pay off what the promises are? I want to work for a company that has raving fans. My world as a marketer is so much easier when people love the product. Right, and we see this with some of the flywheels and the product-led growth, right? Mm-hmm. Hot topic of the word. But the product's still got to do the job. Otherwise, you won't have product-led growth. You have product-led churn, right? As you go through that, a great company to me is Mural, right? And I'm a raving fan of Mural. I use it with my teams all the time. I use it with clients and prospects and all that kind of stuff. And the product works. I have frustrations now and then, sure, but overall, it delivers on it, and I enjoy it. Versus other stuff can be really, really difficult.
I love it. That's good stuff. I love that story. That's a great one.
I'm still watching the kids swimming down the river, but I think it's interesting because if you're talking about measuring, obviously CAC is the customer acquisition cost is something that's critical, but also you're betting your career on a revenue number that probably includes some modeling around customer lifetime value, right? And
or retention, really... so the job at the top isn't as high, right? Like all that stuff.
Exactly, and the downstream impact of that, and then just getting to really understand the why, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I think oftentimes as marketers, we're so busy that we're just not stopping and asking the question, well, why? To your point, Jeff, what are we trying to accomplish here? What is our goal? Why? And customer marketing, I mean, when you talk about the full funnel, right? You've got to, I know Tracy Eiler, often talks about the infinity loop, right? And so, once the handoff from, sales to customer success, marketing still needs to be involved in that because, we're always selling, especially in the SaaS world, right?
Well, and it's the low-hanging fruit. It's the easiest way the renewals are the easy way, to get that to that revenue. So tough question, Jeff. Would you have taken the job had you known the customers that it was in that situation?
Without naming the company, the short answer is probably not, had I known the product was where it was and the customers were where they were, because that was the bane of my existence. Honestly, it made everything so much harder. Proving that the product could do what we were even remotely, it was a lot of marketing fluff. And it's like, I got to try to pay this thing off. And then I need proof points because, that's what everybody's going to ask for. Well, how much is it going to do this? Or how, what can I expect when I do this type of thing? And it's really just critical to dive into those things. Like for me, talking to the head of engineering, trying to talk to an actual customer, those are some of the best things that you can try to do. Very often they'll keep them kind of close to the chest. But you need to find somebody who's willing to be honest and candid with you, because what you'll also find is that, even CEOs often don't have the full picture until the alarm bells are going off, and the alarm bells should have gone off at at 10, 12%, red state, not, 30+%.
Yeah, that's high, right? That's a definitely a red flag.
Massively high, right? And as you look at startups and things like that, or even publicly traded companies, right? That's all risk that's in that. And so how do you de-risk all of that is by making happy customers.
Right. We had a client that actually was focused on understanding they had a high amount of churn, and what they realized is companies, maybe smaller or earlier in their maturity, were not the right fit for them, right? And so they, because they were the ones that were churning. And so that analysis led them to kind of pivot, from a marketing perspective, what's the strategy and who do we want to go after, to really focus on that longer customer relationship.
Well, that's one of the projects I'm working on right now is these smaller customers, and how do you get them to get value out of the software that they're buying? Right. And how do you come up with use cases that are actually applicable, right, to them, so that they can get success out of it versus get frustration out of it. And that's kind of, I think, a lot of the different elements as you dig in is, a lot of software has value across the spectrum. You just got to figure out where are the nuggets and how do you make it as easy to use as possible. Not everything's going to be easy, but then if it's not, have a plan for how you're going to make that customer happy, from start to finish.
Yeah, I agree.
So let's talk about your last failure.
Uh-oh. All right.
So you were at a large organization. I think we've heard this name before, actually, where there were maybe some miscalculations on your part related to opinions and maybe positions within the organization that caused you a little bit of heartburn. Do you want to elaborate on that? Is there anything our listeners can learn from your fuck up there, Jeff?
Yeah. It doesn't matter where you are in your career, there will always be politics. Yeah. And it is important to understand the dynamics of those politics. I was early in my career at a small startup that makes products like Excel, some of those things that are out there, and I was focused on growing that Microsoft's relationship with CMOs and agencies. Really fun job, right? I'm like, I got the entire Microsoft portfolio. I got all the partner portfolios. We're talking to the agencies, like all kinds of fun stuff that's tied into this. And I get to craft the story and the team's message around that and the go-to-market strategy and all those kinds of things. And, very quickly, you talk to any marketers, you're like, oh, you're going to CMO.com. You're not coming here for anything. If anything, you're a detractor on anything my sales team's trying to sell you. Right? You're that squeaky wheel that wants to use something else besides a Microsoft product. So I was like, okay, so we have a problem that the audience is never going to see this message, right? Or we're going to have to force feed it to them, which is not the right way to do that. And so kind of going to our earlier conversation on content, I said, all right, well, how do we create some great content that is going to deliver value to these people to start building rapport with them, to start bringing them in? And we tailored it to our different things that we had solutions to, like our advertising with Bing and some of our creative stuff and our analytics stuff that was really cool with Azure and all the things that we were doing. And, went and built what I call a big rock piece of content, stealing from Jason Miller's his whole thing there. And we built this thing, and I grabbed it for today in our conversation, Project Evolution there. And it was this massive e-magazine that we had. It was going to run for 4 months. We had budget to do 3 of them. We had well-designed, well laid out, broken into lots of pieces and infographics and videos. And we had our social handles. And we had our own independent website as we were going through that, and we were going to launch all that. And so in good, big corporate fashion, early in your career, you self-promote when you do something big. So we get this thing rolled out. We're really excited about it. We're getting great feedback. We talk to the analyst. We talk to Serious Decision. I'm the one who brought Serious Decision into Microsoft, and he's like, this is amazing. Go do it. And so we're pushing it. No secrets that we were doing this work at all. And then one team heard that we were doing this thing, and they were the enterprise a team that in there. I'm not going to get specifics on that. Besides, they were in the enterprise group, and basically they got really pissed off that we pushed this whole thing out. And it was like, well, why'd you do? Why you're going to lead traffic away from this site to that site and this and that. I was like, this audience is not coming to this site. Like, what's our webpage traffic? Like 0. What's the strategy across all of corporate to drive to this? Like, your primary buyers are not this audience, and they don't care. They don't give a crap about what we have to say. It's like, we're leading them to water in as many ways as possible as we go through this. So back and forth with this team, and then I get a phone call from my boss's boss's boss, and it's a Friday afternoon, and I can still remember it. I'm sitting there, and it's Jeff, this is what people lose their jobs for at Microsoft.
Wah, wah.
And I was like, well, shit. So we dumped the website, took everything offline, all stop. It's still one of the best pieces of content I've ever produced in my career. Tightly aligned to full go-to-market, tightly aligned to draw people in at different depths of content. I still use the strategy today. I call it wave campaigns as a part of that, where you've got these sequences and how they go together. Because it's the right strategy. But it was an instance of not fully understanding and comprehending egos and kind of different people in and around that, and kind of politics in those situations.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see in your new endeavor, because I'm not good at politics, Jeff. I struggle with it. I mean, Dana is much better at it than I am, better at reading situations and such. I'm a little bit of a bull in a china shop. But, it'll be interesting to see, being not in the middle of it, being on the outside of it, kind of what... how that will change how you navigate politics. But you're absolutely right.
It's one of the things I tell kind of my mentees and students. I say, when somebody's asking for something, try to understand or think through kind of the why. Why is this person pushing on? Why is this product person having to insist that these things were launched by these dates? And you're feeling all the pain from that because it's not real, right? Well, it's because that's how they're comped, right? That's how they're committed. It's and ideally, once you understand that, you can then go have a candid conversation and figure out how to make it work for the both of you, right? But understanding, getting to the root cause of why someone is behaving the way they are, or at least making some educated guesses, that people may never say out loud, but at least if you go at it with that perspective, I've had people who they actively attack you essentially to try to deflect eyeballs from them because they don't know what they're doing. Yeah. Right? They're at a senior role and they've kind of gotten there by playing politics the whole time, and all they're doing is referencing back to their notes because they don't know their field, they don't know their area, they don't know what their teams are doing, and they're deflecting and attacking other people. And that's kind of their MO. And so when you know that, you can prepare for it. You can try to educate yourself. You can educate your team, right? Ideally, you want to shield your teams from those politics and stuff. But if they're the ones feeling some of that brunt of those attacks, like, you still got to think that way. You got to be proactive about that.
That's good advice.